Hello again everybody, it's nice to see you. Today I want to be speaking about something which I'm realising more and more as time goes on. I've brought you out with me to what I think is quite a nice spot where we can look over the city. I'm going to be discussing a few very important points, especially for young people. The older I get, the more I realise the concept of everything we're told to do is almost a lie. We're told that we're supposed to have everything figured out by such a young age, and by the time you're 25, it's almost seen as expected that you'll have a good career, a stable income, maybe have a property of your own, whether it's rented or purchased, and all these different expectations and things that are seen as measures of success. The older and older I get, I see things differently. Now, for a lot of my teenage years especially, and even my year of age 20, I had this mindset that I needed to achieve certain things. I had this mindset that I wasn't exactly where I should be, and I felt like I was behind. Not necessarily all of my peers, but perhaps statistical averages. Maybe the fact that none of my friends and, again, my peer group were not there as well should have told me more than anything else. But it's very easy, especially as a young person, to get caught up on these ideas of what needs to be done. And I know from experience speaking to people and interacting with you guys in the comments, I'm not the only one. This is quite a common problem for our generation. People feel like they're super behind, when in reality, that's often not the case. The older I get, the more and more I think your 20s are not necessarily for success per se. I think they are for building success, and I think everyone should be focused on that. But at the same time, this is probably not the period in your life where you're going to discover success or be your most successful. And that might sound like a weird thing to say, especially for someone who makes a channel dedicated to speaking about topics of self-improvement and enlightenment. So why would I say such a thing? Well, as I say, the older I get, the more I realise how hard everything is. I'll give you a few examples. Having a stable job that pays fairly well is going to take, for most people, at least a couple of years of experience. If you're, let's say, between 19 and 25, you likely don't have those couple of years. Maybe you just started out in the world of work, maybe you've been doing your degree. You don't have years to get a very good job straight away, because, if you require a couple of years of experience, you don't have it, you're not likely going to land it. Even if you go down the avenue that I am, building a business, and building multiple businesses, it's another front where I think the older I get, the more I realise this is a multi-year project. And it's something that I realised to myself earlier in this week actually. Whilst I think I'm doing quite well with the money that I'm making online, and it is enough to cover my living expenses, and it does beat the average UK salary, I'm also realising that from my businesses alone, one or multiple, I'm probably not going to have a stable income as an entrepreneur, a genuinely stable income, until I'm probably about 25. Because that's likely how long it's going to take to build, obviously, multiple streams and be secure with them and have other measures in place. Again, we look at fronts like property and all these different... People feel like they should be at a level that's unrealistic for most at an age that's very young. And this, I think, is not a point of laziness. I'm sure some people in the comments will still say it's the fact that our generation's lazy and we don't want to do anything. The reality of it, I think, is actually a lot more complex, because nobody, especially in this generation, has it figured out at such a young age. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, because I don't think it's been the case that anyone has it truly figured out at this age, any time in history. But there's probably more of an emphasis on it now, because we see all of these people portraying images of success online. I'll give you a few examples that I think are very relevant to this point. Think about movies and main characters. Oftentimes, the superhero, or even the main protagonist, is in their 30s, 40s, or 50s. This is extremely relevant to people watching this, because if you're like me, 20, 21, the fact of the matter is you don't have enough experience to be the main hero. And I don't say that to be rude, I don't say it to give myself an excuse or anything like that, but think about it, you've not got that much life experience. You might be learning, you might know a lot, but lived experience, if you've actually done stuff, not the kind of people who think they've had lived experience just because they've got older. No, I'm on about the people who have been training for longer than I've been alive, right? There's going to be people out there. Of course they're going to be stronger. There's people who have been earning for longer than I've been alive. Of course they're going to have more money and skills. And this is a fact of it. To open up to you guys a little bit more about my story, I spent a lot of my teenage years and even some of my university years feeling like I was behind and failing in life because I was comparing myself to these unrealistic standards, when in reality these are things that, never mind the money, the experience, the growing into yourself physically and mentally and spiritually, these were things that I couldn't have achieved as a teenager, right? And that's just the truth of it. Not trying to make an excuse, it just would not have been possible. And reflecting on that to where I am now, yes, I'm still frustrated about a few things not being the way I want, but what I'm realizing is this: number one, you've got to live this experience. And what I mean by that is what I said in a video that I published yesterday. I spoke about the fact that your 20s are for living. They only come around once. If you want to watch all of that stuff, it's in that video. But a lot of people are scared to live them. They're trying to just stack money and do nothing else. You're going to miss out on something. There's something in these years that money can't buy, and you can't trade, right? Billionaires can't get their youth back, and neither can you. Especially your younger 20s, 21, 25. Obviously after that I think it gets a bit more serious, but look, I'm going to spend that time experiencing as many things as I can, because let's be honest, just like a lot of you guys, I can. Maybe that's a position of great privilege, maybe I'm not realising that I'm doing things wrong, but think about it. A lot of you guys in your early 20s, statistically and factually from what I hear, you live with parents or family, or in flat shares or house shares, maybe even student accommodation, which means that your living costs are substantially lower than they could be. You've got the time to experience a few different jobs. You've got the time to try build a business. You've got the time to travel if your living costs are lower and you can afford it. And people might say, well, that's not moving you forwards. Well, actually, it is. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm naive, but think about this: careers, money, incomes, businesses. These are the kind of things you'll have to run until you're into retirement, because you'll have to fund your cost of living a lot more substantially. Now, if that really is the case, the bird tried to disrupt my filming. If that really is the case, as it obviously is, wouldn't you utilise as much of your free time, as much of your time where you don't need to have that much of a responsibility or perhaps an onus on what you do, to explore what it is that you might want in this 60 to 100 years that you have on the planet? Wouldn't you want to find out, spend 5 to 10 years finding out, trying different things? Because the truth of it is, the truth of it is, you cannot have 30 years of experience at 20. You cannot have 40 years of experience at 25. And this is where people go wrong. Because let's just use the idea of careers and business. Most people have this concept that your average entrepreneur is going to be some broke student in his 20s or her 20s. But the reality of it is, your average entrepreneur is someone who's 30s, 40s, maybe even 50s. Because generally they've spent the time, they've got their life in order, they've got finances and experience behind them, and then with a degree of conviction, knowing that they can do what they can do, then they've gone out and tried to make it. Now, does that mean that you shouldn't try and make anything in your 20s? No. I run a few businesses, as I've explained before, and I think it's still the smartest move that you can make. With that being said, like I say, I spent a lot of my teenage years, and again, some of my 20s, but I'm only 21, being a little bit miserable about the fact that I'm, behind, and I should have a house and an online business that makes 7 figures at age 17, 18. It was never going to happen. It happens to some. It may still happen to me before I'm 30, but this is the thing, right? It used to really depress me, and it shouldn't have. Because what happened subsequently is I spent a lot of time that I could have spent enjoying or doing more genuinely meaningful stuff trying to make money. I spent a lot of time trying to get into cliques and circles that I just couldn't have fitted in for no other reason than the fact I just didn't have experience, right? And I know it sounds weird, but I'm only 21, and at the job that I do, I work with people who are 16, 17, 18. It sounds stupid, it sounds weird, but just in that short 4 or less years, it feels like a lifetime ago. The relatability is just not there. And obviously, like I say, I can't blame them for that. It's just the way of the world. But looking at it with this retrospect, I now realise something I didn't realise when I was 18, 19. And that's that I don't know what I don't know. And yes, you can still make something amazing of yourself, but look around at the world. Look around at your peer group. You're not necessarily behind. You're probably right where you're meant to be. And then I look at where I am right now, right? And I might be like, oh, I've not got, my own big house, or I have got a car, to be fair, but I might say I'm not making 100k profit from my business. I might make 100k revenue this year, next year, maybe, we'll see. But I'm not making 100. And now I realize this would have probably at age, let's say 19, 20, depressed me, or have depressed me, or made me feel miserable. Now, with just a couple of years of insight, I sit there and I think, like, most people at age 21 have not got a business that's making anything. They haven't got a business. Most people just don't. Most people are not trying with as many different business ideas as I am. And I'm not saying this as a brag, I'm saying this to hopefully explain a bit of my stance, which is hopefully going to clear up things for a lot of you guys. Most people 21 are not going to the gym. Most people 21 have not got more than a couple thousand in savings. If you're doing these, and these are just a few fronts that I'm trying to explain that are easy to, discuss. If you're on these points or ahead of these points, you're ahead of where most people are. And like I say, yeah, you're going to need to do some things substantial. I.e., if you want to become rich, if you want to become talented, you're going to need to go break the cycle at some point. But this is the thing. In terms of trajectory, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm deluded, I'm sure some of you guys will tell me that I am in the comments. But in terms of trajectory, like I say, I run businesses successfully. I'm trying different ideas all the time. I work, I save, I invest, I go out, I socialise, I go to the gym. That is a trajectory stronger than what most people are on. And that's not me trying to be rude, but this is the fact of life. Again, no discredit to anybody at all, but using a few of these examples, if you look at where you are in line with most people, have you got a job? Yeah, well, a lot of people of our generation don't. Have you got savings? Well, most people of our generation don't. Do you live by yourself or independently? Well, most people don't do that. Again, do you drive? Do you have a car? Do you have friends? You line things up and it becomes a lot more clear that you're probably ahead of where you want to be, need to be. Okay, maybe not where you want to be, but where you statistically should be. Then you line up that trajectory and you think, look, you're going to grow into yourself a lot more, physically, mentally, spiritually. You'll grow into your face a lot more. You'll get more human experience, confidence, money, job experience. You'll become a better person, or a more desirable person, when you're in your mid to late 20s, if not 30s, if not 40s. And again, this is not me trying to make a video where I say, well, I'm not doing that well, so blame it on my future self, that's going to be fun. No, it's not one of them. Am I going to still try with every business? Of course I am. You guys know me by this point. Am I going to still try be excellent? Am I still going to drive myself forwards? Yeah, of course I am. But at the same time, it was a point that used to, well, just make me feel so miserable. Again, I used to spend, it sounds stupid even looking back, but I used to spend days of my week or hours of the day pondering on things that I'd seen and wondering why that wasn't me. And yeah, it could be. It probably still could be. It probably still will be. But at the same time, why did I do that? Of course, when a Ferrari drove past, I was inquisitive, and I should have been. But I used to genuinely feel bad for not having that level of success at aged 18, 19, right? And yeah, I still want to do as well as I can. But looking back, that was stupid. Increasingly, a lot of these videos are like story times, and this is kind of one in a way. There is a point, and it's something that we can all, I hope, learn from. And that is the fact that what I experienced is probably what a lot of you guys are feeling too. A lot of you may feel like you're behind, a lot of you may feel like it's not going your way, a lot of you may feel like you're never going to make it. But like I say, just look at this as a fact of life. Look at the age of most CEOs, right? We're talking guys at the very earliest 30, at the very latest we could be into the 70s, maybe even older than that. Look at most millionaires, most entrepreneurs. All these different categories, it's valid. And this is my point. Does it mean that you shouldn't try? No. Of course you should try. If you can be the one that breaks the cycle, that's great. If you can really make it young, brilliant. But if you're not necessarily there yet, try not to do what I did and make yourself miserable about it. I can laugh at it looking back, but it really was a silly time. And like I say, this does not take away from my drive to achieve, but why walk around miserable about something that statistically is almost impossible, right? If you're feeling like this in your life, take a minute to look back at where you are. Look at what you've got compared to your friends, what you're doing to move yourself forwards on the daily, and then make the assessment as to how you're doing in life.